He gave me everything. Private jets, diamonds, power. I gave him lies. I thought I was winning, until I met the woman he actually loved. I wasn't prepared for her. She didn't just ruin the game, she ruined me. This is not just a story, it's a confession. If you've ever played with love, or thought you could outsmart it, stay with me. Because this is where it all falls apart. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who got caught up in a lie that big. I didn't grow up around money. My world was dollar menus, secondhand clothes, and watching my mom stretch a paycheck like magic. I was just a girl with ambition, trying to find a way out, anyway. I never dreamed about love the way other girls did. I dreamed about freedom, about not having to worry, about walking into a place and knowing I belonged. So when I met him and saw the kind of life he lived, I didn't think twice. I knew what he wanted, a woman who understood him, who saw him beyond the money. I knew how to fake that. At first, it felt like I was just playing a role, like I was in a movie and finally cast as the lead. But the thing about playing a role is, eventually, you lose track of who you really are. And I did. I lost myself. This isn't a story about gold digging. It's not even really a story about him. It's about how chasing the fantasy turned into my own personal nightmare, and how the person I never saw coming. She's the one who broke me. I didn't grow up with much, but I was always hungry for more. I was that girl who watched the rich walk past and told myself, one day, that's going to be me. Not because I hated where I came from, but because I was tired of struggling, tired of watching my mom carry the weight of the world on her back while pretending everything was fine. We smiled through overdue bills and celebrated birthdays with gas station cupcakes. That kind of life teaches you to hustle early. I started working young, waitressing, selling clothes online, babysitting, anything that gave me a little more than I had the day before. Eventually, I got into promo work, modeling at upscale events, passing champagne at gallery openings. That's when I saw it, the lifestyle I wanted. Women gliding around in dresses that cost more than my rent, men in suits talking about trips to the Maldives like they were weekend errands. I didn't envy them, I studied them. I wasn't the prettiest girl in the room, but I was smart. I listened, I learned, I could be whoever I needed to be. That's how it started, not with some big dramatic moment, but with a quiet decision. I told myself, if you get the chance, take it. Not because I wanted to scam anyone, but because for once, I wanted to know what it felt like to have more than enough. So when he came along, older, powerful, obviously loaded, I didn't see love, I saw opportunity. I told myself, play your cards right, and you'll never have to go back to scraping pennies. I didn't know I was walking straight into the biggest lie of my life. The night I met him, I wasn't looking for anything. I was just working another event, some tech launch at a rooftop hotel, the kind of place where the drinks are expensive and the people pretend they're more important than they are. I was there in a tight black dress, tray in hand, smile glued to my face. I didn't even notice him at first. He didn't come in loud or flashy. He moved like someone who didn't need to prove anything. Confident, quiet, rich. You could feel it. He asked for a drink, not in the usual flirty, sleazy way, but polite. Director. He looked at me like I mattered. Not like a waitress, not like a girl in heels trying to blend in. Just me. And that threw me off. Later that night, I found out who he was. Private jets, real estate all over the world, a name you could Google and find headlines. I knew I wouldn't see him again. Guys like that don't notice girls like me twice. But a week later, I did. He showed up at another event, spoke to me again, and this time, he asked questions. Where I was from, what I liked, what I wanted. That's when the switch flipped. I saw a door open, and I stepped through without hesitation. I wasn't in love, not even close. But I knew how to become what he was looking for. Someone who made him feel seen, Someone who didn't chase the money because she didn't need it. He thought he found something real, and I let him believe that. I told myself, just keep playing the part. But the problem with playing is that eventually, someone calls your bluff. Once he let me in, it all happened fast. Dinner turned into weekends. Weekends turned into trips. One minute I was pouring drinks in heels that hurt my feet, and the next I was stepping onto private jets, wrapped in designer clothes I didn't pay for. I played the part like I was born for it, quiet when I needed to be, opinionated just enough to seem authentic. I wasn't fake, I was calculated. There's a difference. He liked that I didn't act impressed, so I studied the world he came from. I stopped reacting to luxury like it was new. I acted like I'd seen it all before, even though inside I was screaming. Every time I got something, a bag, a necklace, a seat next to him at an exclusive table, I told myself, you're doing this for a reason. At night, I would lie next to him while he talked about his business, his fears, his dreams. He trusted me, opened up in ways I could tell he didn't with anyone else. Sometimes I caught myself almost feeling sorry for him. But then I'd remember, he had everything. I had nothing but this performance. The hardest part, pretending to care without actually caring. I couldn't afford to fall for him. That was never the plan. He was sweet, sure, thoughtful, but this was about survival. Still, sometimes I wondered, if I kept playing this game long enough, would the act become real? Would I start to believe my own lie? But just when I thought I had it all under control, when I thought I'd built something unshakable, she showed up, and everything I built, every lie I stacked like bricks around me, began to crack. She didn't walk in like a threat. That's the scary part. She was graceful, quiet, effortless, the kind of woman who didn't need to compete because she already knew where she stood. I first saw her at one of his charity events. She hugged him like she'd known him forever, and from the way his eyes softened, I knew she had. He introduced her casually. An old friend, he said, but I wasn't stupid. There was history between them, thick, unspoken, and dangerous. I smiled, shook her hand, played nice. But inside, my gut twisted. Over the next few weeks, she kept popping up. Brunch meetings, private dinners, events I wasn't invited to. He started cancelling our plans, saying he was busy or needed space. His eyes got harder to read, his voice more distant. I started feeling something I hadn't felt in months, insecure. She was everything I pretended to be, charming, cultured, educated, but real. I watched him light up around her in ways he never did with me. He laughed deeper. He listened harder. She didn't need anything from him, and that made her powerful. I tried to stay calm, to remind myself this was just about keeping my spot. But every time she showed up, I felt smaller, more exposed. Then one night, he came home quiet, didn't touch me, didn't ask about my day, just sat there, looking at me like he was seeing through all of it. That's when I knew. The game had changed, and she wasn't here to play fair. Once she arrived, everything I built started to fall apart, piece by piece. At first, it was small things. The way he'd glance at his phone when I talked, his sudden coldness after a text message. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just stress, work. But deep down, I knew better. I started making mistakes, slipping up on details, forgetting stories I'd told him, getting defensive over questions that felt too probing. My mask was cracking and he saw it. He didn't yell or accuse. He just watched, quiet and distant, like waiting for the truth to spill out on its own. Then came the whispers, subtle comments from people around us, the way friends exchanged looks when I walked into a room. I realized she wasn't just a shadow. I was becoming a joke. The woman who pretended to be perfect, but was nothing but a lie. She played it smart, not aggressive, but precise. I caught her at events, smiling in a way that said, I'm the one he wants. And it was true. He started pulling back emotionally, closing off conversations, avoiding plans, staying busy. And the hardest part, I couldn't blame him. I knew what I'd done. I knew I hadn't been honest with him or myself. The longer I stayed, the more I lost. There were nights I cried alone, hating how far I'd fallen, how I'd let the lie become my reality. I wanted to fight for us, for the life I'd dreamed of, but I was drowning in my own deception. And then it all came crashing down. The moment I'd been fearing, the moment I was never ready for, arrived with a silence louder than any argument. The confrontation wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting match or wild accusations. Instead, it was quiet, cold, almost clinical. He didn't have to say much. The look in his eyes said everything: disappointment, sadness, and the painful acceptance that I wasn't who he thought I was. She had done her work. She didn't need to expose me with fanfare. She just handed him the pieces, the messages I thought I deleted, the stories that didn't add up, the background I tried so hard to hide, and he put them together. When he finally faced me, his voice was calm, but every word cut deep. He said he felt betrayed, not because of the lies, but because he thought I cared. That's what hurt the most, the realization that even if I had faked the love, he had given me something real. I wanted to explain, to beg, to tell him it was all just survival. But the words wouldn't come. The truth was heavier than any excuse I could make. He didn't scream. He didn't curse. He just stepped back and let me fall. The life I had built with him, the luxury, the status, the dreams, it all disappeared overnight. It wasn't just a breakup. It was a reckoning. I lost the man, yes. But more than that, I lost myself. I was left with the shame of knowing I had played a part I wasn't meant to play, and that the price of pretending was higher than I ever imagined. That day, I realized some lies don't just break hearts, they destroy everything in their path, especially the person who tells them. After everything ended, I was left standing in the ruins of a life I barely recognized. The designer bags, the fancy dinners, the trips, they all vanished like smoke. But losing those things was the easy part. The hardest was facing who I'd become. I went from being someone with a plan to someone who had lost her way completely. I felt exposed, embarrassed, and hollow. People I thought I knew turned away. The circles I had entered so carefully closed their doors. It was like I was erased. I remember walking down streets I used to dream about, feeling invisible. The girl who once looked up at the world with hope was gone, replaced by someone who had learned the brutal truth about pretending. At night, the silence was deafening. I replayed every moment, the lies, the fake smiles, the times I convinced myself I was okay. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust myself again. But in that emptiness, I found something unexpected: clarity. I realized that I had been chasing a version of myself that wasn't real. And maybe, just maybe, this was the wake-up call I needed. I started small, working odd jobs, reconnecting with people who knew me before the glitter and glam. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was honest. I'm still healing, still figuring out what real love looks like, not the kind bought with money, but the kind that's built on truth. This story isn't just about loss. It's about the messy, painful process of finding yourself again after everything falls apart. And I'm ready to keep going, even if the road ahead is long and uncertain. Looking back, I realized the biggest mistake I made wasn't pretending to love him. It wasn't even trying to live a life that wasn't mine. The mistake was losing myself in the process, letting the lie swallow who I really was. At first, I thought faking love was just a game, something harmless. But love isn't a game. It's messy, complicated, and it always finds a way to reveal the truth, no matter how carefully you hide it. I learned that the hard way. I often think about the woman who came back into his life, the one he really loved. At first, I hated her. I saw her as the villain who ruined everything I had worked for, but now I see her differently. She wasn't the enemy. She was just real, She didn't pretend, didn't play games. She loved him for who he was, flaws and all. And in that honesty, she held power I never had. That was the lesson I needed but didn't want to hear. Real love can't be faked or bought. It has to be earned, nurtured, and given freely. No matter how many gifts you receive or how many roles you play, if it's not real, it will break. I'm not proud of what I did, but I don't regret the journey, because it forced me to confront parts of myself I had ignored for too long. The hunger for acceptance, the fear of not being enough, the temptation to take shortcuts instead of facing the hard work of growing. I'm still rebuilding, but this time, I'm doing it with honesty. It's scary and slow, but it's mine. No masks, no lies. Just me, flawed, learning, trying. If you're watching this and you feel tempted to fake it, to pretend, or to take a shortcut, please don't. Love, life, and success built on lies will always come crashing down. The cost is too high. Instead, focus on being true to yourself. Work hard for what you want. Face your fears instead of running from them. Because the real power isn't in pretending to be someone else. It's in being exactly who you are, even when it's hard. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you or made you think twice about the choices you're making, please share it. Someone out there might need to hear this truth. And if you've been through something similar, remember, you're not alone. Healing is possible. Change is possible. Real love is possible. I'm still on that journey, and I hope you are too. If you're thinking of faking love to get ahead, don't. The price you'll pay isn't always money, it's who you become. If my story hit you deep, share it. Someone else might be where I once stood.